Okay, so welcome. This is our monthly free Chi Talk with Rev Fajun. That's me, in case you didn't know by my clerical garb. And tonight, these talks monthly, we had 4 of them stacked up. This Miko helped me come up with this great idea. In conjunction with the self-paced course that some of you have taken or taken parts of, called the Alchemical Immersion, which is on my website, templestyle.com, for those of you watching YouTube later. Each of these monthly talks is in association with each of the 4 modules of the Alchemical Immersion self-paced course. And that's kind of nice because it helps if you are out there doing self-paced stuff all on your own. It's nice to get together and even online, just practice within a community a little bit. So that's what we're doing. And we have reached module 3. This is the second to last of these talks, evening talks. And then Saturday, Miko will give a practice along class on the stuff that's in this module. And then in a few weeks, I'll give a Saturday class and Miko will give a Thursday night Q&A talk, and it'll be really fun. But where you have landed, the Alchemical Immersion course goes through 4 basic sets or like practice sequences for Qigong. There are 3 main ones, and then there's kind of an auxiliary one in there. And those are the master sequence, the Taoist 5 or Taoist 5 Yin tonification exercise, but we just call it the Taoist 5, and the 8-section brocade. And then there's also a set in there that you learn of just the 6 healing sounds and the practice of the microcosmic orbit. That's what we did last month. So if you missed that class, it was pretty fun. That's up on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So this month we are working on the Taoist 5, and it's a great chance in studying our theory to learn a little bit about the 3 main techniques of medical Qigong. So if you're taking notes in your brain or on your paper, a couple of points for you, specific points, and then we're going to do some experiential practices. So the first point, in modern Qigong, they tend to divide it into sort of 3 styles of Qigong, or 3 types of Qigong. And they call these medical Qigong, martial arts Qigong, and spiritual Qigong. Medical, martial, and spiritual. And this is because modern Qigong it's a modern invention. The word Qigong actually didn't come about until I think it was the 1940s. It was sort of developed as a term. And before that time, in the martial arts, you had practices like things called Neigong, which means like inner skill, or Weigong, which means outer skill, or Gong Li training, which means like skill of strength training. And these are all the ways that martial artists would use breathing exercises, mind-body connection to do things like break boards or bring up their spirit while they were practicing for long hours, regulate their injuries, things like that. Then as well, in spiritual traditions, they had this idea of Shengong. Shengong meaning to cultivate the spirit. And as well, there's this notion that you'll hear about sometimes called Neidan, which is inner alchemy. And then in what we call medical Qigong, they also had the main divisions. Just in case you're nerding out, I just wanted to share with you the background info for fun. The 2 main divisions were, what do they call it? Dao Yin Anmo. Dao Yin Anmo, which is actually 2 things, but they say it together, which means Dao Yin is to stretch and guide. So that's where you might stretch a meridian, or you might do movements that are meant to guide the qi through its pathways. And then Anmo is actually massaging the body. An means to press, and mo means to rub. So these self-massage exercises, and this is the same stuff that comes into yoga in the Indias, it comes into Salung Chokor in Tibet, these stretching and guiding energies, and then using actual contact with the physical body. They did as a medical intervention. And then the other half was called Wai Chi Liao Fa, which means external energy the alpha healing method, external energy healing method. Thank you for your patience. And so these are the classic divisions of what we now would call the medical Qigong. But in all of those old systems, there wasn't one thing called Qigong. That's a modern invention. And as such, for all that the Cultural Revolution in China brought some real challenges. One of the blessings that we've been able to extract out of that modernization is that there was an attempt to take these powerful ancient traditions and sort of codify it so that we could learn almost in a modern university format all of the ins and outs of these ancient practices. The risk you run there, of course, is that you may lose some of the traditional connection. But I think I'm especially blessed, at least I feel especially blessed, because I got what they call the mountain method by having a heart connection to a authorized Sifu who taught me in that traditional style, as well as going to a medical Qigong university where they taught me in that university style. Okay, so all that is to say, background information. In modern times, in university training, they've divided Qigong up into three types: martial arts, medical, and spiritual. And there's a lot of overlap between these, but it gives you a way to kind of categorize things of, oh, well, what are we working on? So in medical Qigong, that's what we're talking about here tonight. The main focus is on regulating the health of the body, or using acupressure techniques or energetic healing techniques to regulate the health, help another person to regulate their health. And within that, there are three techniques you use. You can boil it all down to three. And those are dispersing, tonifying, and harmonizing. Dispersing, tonifying, and harmonizing. So the reason I wanted to bring this up with you tonight as our point of theory to discuss and learn is because in this module of the alchemical immersion, we practice the Taoist 5 yin tonification exercise. And so to really understand that, you have to know what's meant by tonification. And as well, there are some specific things in there of understanding when to do a practice like that versus when to do a different kind of practice, because the notion in medical Qigong is that Qigong practices are not one size fits all. Qigong practices are not one size fits all. Does that sound like a relief to any of you? Like it maybe does to me, that it's not one size fits all. I don't know about you, and I might be going out on a limb. Feel free to log out if you severely disagree with me on this point. But I've been to like some yoga cults and stuff like that, where their main party line is like, this is the one true path of yoga. And if it's not working for you, try harder. And then if you try harder and it doesn't work, oh, you've probably got karmic impurities. You're probably just secretly a bad person. And in medical Qigong, we totally call bullshit on that. We say, nope, actually, you were trying to teach me something that catalyzes inner fire, and I am a Pitta dosha type. I'm made of inner fire. Bro, why didn't you teach me the stuff that cools me down? Right? And you get this in some of these traditions. The tradition is often authentic in that it was what someone needed at some point in their life, right? Someone's student needed their inner fire catalyzed by these extreme methods. And then on down through the years, somewhere they said, oh yeah, no, the one way to get realization is to go like this. Okay, 108 times, and then you're going to hold your breath, and then you're going to do it again and jump up and down. It's like, whoa, that's not going to work for all of us, buddy. So in that, if we understood the ideas behind tonification, dispersion, and harmonizing, we could look at any of the practices that we came across and sort of determine what that recipe is meant to do. And the thing about being a Qigong master is the idea that you should be able to look at a student's constitution and advise them toward which practices might help them in their constitution or in their current state, rather than just having kind of a one size fits all, and it's sort of luck if that happens to work for you. So this is why I'm excited about this conversation, because I think it's a modernization of these practices that needs to happen. But last thing I'll say on my rant here, just in case you think that's too modern of a notion, like, well, wait, because there is something really beautiful about, like, you fall in love with wild goose Qigong, right? And then you learn the first set and the second set and the third set, and I forget how many they have, and you just learn the system as is. Like, there's something really badass about that, right? And so we want to be careful to not get too American about it and be like, well, Wild Goose Set 1 is cool, but I think it's tonifying, and Wild Goose Set 3, that's too dispersive. So I'm going to mix and match with what I learned from Master Sifu Ken over here. And like, that's not quite as awesome. But lest you think we've gone too modern and radical and off the rails, leftist Qigong or something over here, this is actually where the origin of these traditions come from. So I'm certainly not claiming that I'm a realized or conscious being, but where the systems come from was always, according to these inner yogic traditions, was always a teacher teaching specifically to a student for their next work, for their next inner work, be it for their health, be it for their spiritual development, be it for their emotional development. And one of the slogans my Lama is very fond of is the definition of the highest practice. And the highest practice is always the practice that you need next, which you are able to do, right? So, I could tell you this, oh, here's the fusion of the 5 elements meditation. But if that's not the thing your subtle body or your emotions need, then it just becomes the confusion of the 5 elements. And, it has no self nature of being the most epic practice. It's the most epic practice if that works for you, right? But if we took someone who, was doing the fusion of the 5 elements and it wasn't really the thing for them, and you got this practice of like learning how to relax a little bit, and that was your next level of growth, like, that could be much more profound transformation and change and development than somebody doing some really complex visualization or some super secret mantra that you have to wait 10 years before, the initiation comes back around. Because you would be doing the highest practice, which is the one that's specifically made to benefit you right now. So, whoa, we went far afield from tonifying, dispersing, and harmonizing, or did we? Or did we? Right? Because if you think about, so in medical Qigong, how this works is if you go to your acupuncturist, for example, and you go like, oh, I've been having these allergies. And I remember from massage school, they said that might be a lung qi deficiency. And the acupuncturist takes your pulse and they go, nope, actually, it's liver qi stagnation. They didn't teach you that in massage school. They teach us that in Chinese medicine school. That's why you still got to come pay me money. Liver qi stagnation. And then you would recognize why your Qigong wasn't working for your allergies, because you were trying to build energy to fluff out your Wei qi, when your issue was that you had too much qi stagnant and you needed to clear it. Similarly, if you got more advanced in medical Qigong, if you are like coming down with a cold, for example, they say it's very important to not lock the thief in the house, which means you don't drive energy inward. Like, most of the time, Qigong practice has this like building up the reservoir of vital energy. And you would think, oh, I'm getting sick, I better have more of that. But what they have found, and I found this through personal experience, you can try it out if you like, or just take my word for it. But when you continue those tonifying practices, you could turn a little cold into a month of bronchitis. That's what I did. you don't have to do it now on your own. And it's the difference between knowing like, oh, I don't need to tonify. This is where I need to push something out. This is a time to disperse that energy. So this is on that sort of medical Qigong level of working with the health in your body, but it does relate into spiritual practices as well. For example, the same techniques that we will use in the medical Qigong, I'll give them to you in a second, then we'll try some out. But in the medical Qigong, we use vibration to help clear. So we'll make little sounds with our face, or we'll imagine sounds in our body, or we'll even bounce around or things like that. And the idea is that that vibration breaks up stagnation, and then we'll visualize that stagnation leaving the body. They do the same thing, at least in my tradition, when you're trying to open up these various chakra centers. So if you felt like, oh, the chakra center of the throat is blocked, you would use this vibration sound, hum the Bij mantra for the throat chakra, and you would chant hum and visualize that that vibration vibrates that whole thing out, carries out any goop that's blocking that. And it's the same thing spiritually as well as medically. And then similarly, to tonify our organs, let's say you did go to your acupuncturist. So why do I got these allergies? Oh, your lungs are deficient. In medical Qigong, we would have you visualize a white light filling those lungs, and the lungs start to build up with this beautiful white energy. Well, similarly, if let's say a lot of people's challenge is that they have these sort of chakra centers a little bit overactive and too tight at the same time. And then the one at the root that would connect you to the earth is just like non-existent. And so in our tradition, we would have you breathe in colored light, we'd have you breathe in a red light from the earth, and then flower open that center and see it starting to glow and glow and glow and glow and glow, right? So these are the three main techniques. They are tonifying, which is something doesn't have enough qi, and you are going to bring qi into it. Dispersing, something has too much qi, and you're either going to get rid of it or you're going to mobilize it so that it's not stagnating. And then the third one is either, so the third one is harmonizing. Either you don't have too much or too little, you just want to kind of optimize what you do have. There are also cases like with the spleen pancreas meridian in particular, it gets both deficient in qi and stagnant in dampness at the same time. And so you have to both clear and tonify that organ. And that's where the harmonizing can come in very handy. And then similarly, practices in our Taoist tradition, like the microcosmic orbit, which is in that alchemical immersion course where you breathe energy up the spine and down the front. That's not necessarily adding or taking away. It's just putting the energy in the body into its proper flow. Okay, so these are our three main techniques of medical Qigong. Boy, that was a whole lot of theory already just packed in there, isn't it? We got, what are the three types of Qigong in the modern? So those are athletic, or they say martial arts Qigong in a lot of the old books, but I would say athletic, because it's the same stuff I used to give when I would work on cellists for the Boston Philharmonic during orchestra season. Is that how you say that? Anyway, during orchestra season, concert season, I think, yeah. They were athletes, right? And their delts on this side are doing something different than their pecs on this side, and their lats and their abs. And they need all of these sort of postural regulations and this sports and athletic Qigong that comes from our martial arts tradition. So you've got the martial arts, you've got the spiritual Qigong, and then you've got the medical Qigong. And that's the one we're talking about. Within that, tonify, disperse, and harmonize. Okay, interesting, or am I just talking about what I think is fun? All right, cool. Just want to make sure, see what we're doing. So the basic principles you need to know, and then we'll do a couple little practices just while we are here together. The number one is disperse first. Disperse first. And so this is if you are setting up your own practice. Now, the practice sessions in the alchemical immersion and then later in the entire Qigong instructor course they're all set up for you that way. So they start with clearing and they go through tonifying or harmonizing, and then they may end with the other one that you didn't do yet. Tonifying and harmonizing can kind of swap places sometimes, but you always want to clear first. And their notion is you don't want to bring in all of that chi and then just throw it all away. This is the main thing. But the other place this comes in, you may have taken, I did a series of 3 courses last year on the Taoist sexual yogas, sexual energy yogas. And the first class you should always get is on how to do the 6 healing sounds. Because the notion is that when you start cultivating the sexual energy, it's this sort of more primal, vital force. If there are still pathological type of energies in your organs, that will just feed them. So it's like pouring fuel on the fire. So you have all this rage in your liver, and then you start to build up, oh, now I've got all this sexual energy. And you feel like the Incredible Hulk, or not so incredible. You just feel like the miserable Hulk. So, and then similarly with the various energies of the organs, the lungs are said to contain sadness. And this is one of the things you may find if you start doing that Taoist 5 exercise. It's a really cool energy exercise because it builds the energy of the body very quickly and strongly. And you'll notice that you'll go through cycles that the energy will build, and then the lungs will go, yes, you're strong enough to feel this now. And you'll go through this cycle of like tremendous grief. And what we have found is that that you're in a purification brought on by the Qigong, because you'll say to yourself, God, I haven't felt this way since blank. And according to the Qigong theory, since blank, that's when you began to repress that emotion because you didn't have the resources to integrate it. And so apparently what happens is as you tonify, as you're bringing in all this energy, it now pushes that to the surface, and you have a chance to clear and integrate that. So ideally, what we do is we clear as much of that as we can. But then there's also a place where you should know, I've been tonifying. Now I've gotten so strong that all this goop is coming to the surface. You would switch to dispersing. You would switch to dispersing practice. So those of you who are a little more advanced, this is going to be a great thing for you to hear again. Some of you have heard this from me before. Some of you may be hearing it for the first time, but I'll ask you, how many folks here have ever done like a consistent round of practice? Like, we're going to do Vipassana for 100 days, or I'm going to do the yoga, 7-day challenge, 7 days of yoga or something like that, right? And what you'll notice is if you do a long enough one of these, it doesn't really matter what it is, at a certain point, the system will start to reach its breaking point. And in this verbiage of medical Qigong, they say, well, yeah, you've bolstered the spiritual energy or the subtle energy in the body. And so what they would recommend that one does is, okay, keep doing your sun salutations. You're on day 30, you got, 78 more days to go or whatever it is. Yeah, 78 more days to go if you're on day 30, but integrate the 6 healing sound practice, which is dispersive. And what you may find, and just keep this in your mind for you or for your friend who's like, I started doing Kundalini, I'm doing this teacher training, and I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm 50 days in, you got to practice every day, and I think I'm going to go nuts. Send them over, have them sign up for the alchemical immersion. They can always unsubscribe from my newsletter later and just learn the 6 healing sounds and start doing those 6 healing sounds. And what that does is it's a great Qigong that sort of just skims off the top. It's like all of this stuff is coming up through the transformational work that you've done. And then you just, okay, there, and you just skim it off the top, and it can make all the difference. So this is one of the ways you can start to integrate these ideas of tonifying and dispersion. So we had our principle disperse first, and then we've moved into as well, in describing why you might want to do that as well. When you are tonifying, there's also a moment to come back and understand when to shift in your practice in general through tonification or dispersion. Another place you might see this is in reverse. I used to be part of a community that was quite orthorexic in nature, ultimately. It was a community centered around holistic health, but this interesting phenomenon seemed to happen that people would do cleanse after cleanse after cleanse, and they never seemed to really feel any better. They just kept feeling more and more impure. And oh, well, maybe the next, well, did I cleanse my parasites enough? Did I cleanse my this enough? Did I cleanse my that enough? And so obviously, if you've never heard of orthorexia anymore, go look that up so you can help your friends in case they get caught into cult-like thinking like that. But in this understanding of tonification and dispersion, we might look at, in Chinese medicine very specifically, they say you can only cleanse so much before you'll start to damage the spleen qi. And if the spleen qi is not intact, the body will tend to hold on to whatever energy it has, including pathogens, toxins, illnesses, emotions, because the system goes into this sense of scarcity that it can't let anything else go. And so according to that theory, if you ate some sweet potatoes, your cleanse process might go that much more smoothly. So this is a time when you might want to nourish yourself. Similarly, people who, I used to live in Boston, and the hot yoga was a big thing. This was the early 2000s, early and mid 2000s, right? And it got cold over there. So people all did the hot yoga. And the vegan ones mostly who did the hot yoga all came into my Chinese medicine practice with classic symptoms of yin deficiency. And the reason was they were eating a very cleansing diet, a cool and cleansing diet. And then they were doing a practice that purged and cleansed all the fluids out of their body in a way that they couldn't make back up, right? And so in that practice, the notion was like, it's not, oh, hot yoga is right or wrong, right? It's how many days of the week should you do that to get the result that you want? And so according to this theory, it would be like, okay, do your hot yoga for 3 times a week, and then maybe just do some isometric holds in a normal temperature room and not sweat so much, and then take an electrolyte drink, right? Or maybe do some yin yoga. And what we find, this works in athletics, right? You start to make your weightlifters do a deload week, and they get better strength gains faster than if they were just pushing and pushing and pushing. Because after a certain point, the pushing starts to break down the body. It becomes too dispersive, and you actually need these building type of moments. So the last thing, and actually we did mostly talk and not a lot of practice. So I'll send you, but hopefully it's fun. I have to end on time tonight because I'm hungry. So I got to go tonify myself on the spleen qi direction. So, but the last couple things you'll need to know are how to tonify, disperse, harmonize. The first one is with your breath. The first one is with your breath. And this is all in the alchemical immersion course somewhere. I think it's actually in the first module. But so your breath, you're going to emphasize the exhalation. If you want to disperse, you're going to emphasize the exhalation. And you'll see the same thing is true in the Tibetan yogas. When you want to clear stagnant karmic winds from your system, you exhale longer than inhale. Okay, so this is one. The second thing we do in medical Qigong to disperse is we visualize smoke or smoky colored lights leaving the body. Visualize smoky colored lights or pathogenic energies leaving the body. So if you were to do the healing sound for the lungs, right, you would inhale to the lungs and you exhale with that S sound, and you make a long exhale, and you would visualize out of the lungs all the goop coming out as a smoke, And then generally we send that down into the earth like compost, right? So you would visualize stuff coming out of the body, and then your movements in clearing tend to emphasize moving away from the body. So like the example I just gave, sometimes we'll pull out from the lungs, or we'll push energy out with our punching exercise for the liver. So these are dispersing practices. Tonifying practices are exactly the opposite. You would imagine, or you emphasize the inhale. So your inhale isn't necessarily longer than your exhale. It's just where all the intention and attention are. So again, if we were doing the lungs, it would be inhaling a white light, filling the lungs. And then on the exhale, you just don't really pay much attention to the exhale when you're tonifying. Okay, the second one I already gave to you is you visualize colored light. So in this case, for the lungs, it's inhaling that sense of white qi. And you would imagine then the organ radiates and glows with that colored light, becoming healthier and shinier and all filled up and groovy. Then with your body, the hands tend to move toward the body. This is your tonifying technique. So I did just remember where this is. This is in the first module of the alchemical immersion. When we learn the basic 3 to move the chi. These are tonifying, dispersing, and harmonizing, but they fit with this month's module, and I'll tell you why in a second. The last one, harmonizing, is you do a little bit of both of those. You emphasize both the inhale and the exhale. The hands move away and toward, and sometimes you can visualize smoke leaving the body and light coming in, or sometimes they'll visualize clear light. At other times, they'll visualize moving energy through the body. So like in the course that some of us are doing right now, the Qigong for spring season, we have a move where you are descending and you're using the liver sound. Shoo. This exercise has a dispersing element to it, but it also has a harmonizing element to it. Not just because I made a musical tone and you could harmonize with it, but because the dispersing element is I'm doing this long exhale, right? And I'm doing a sound, shoo. And then I'm imagining any like crummy liver energy is moving down and out through my feet like smoke, shoo. The harmonizing part, though, is just taking the energy from this part of the body and moving it down to the lower parts of the body. And this is a classic Qigong visualization for helping with headaches. It's especially good, actually, we know physiologically for migraine headaches, which is an excess of circulation up in your head. Ordinary headaches are not enough circulation into the head, like tension headaches. Usually the circulation gets a little crimped off. In migraines, there's too much blood flow to the head. And so we have these Qigong visualizations where you try to warm up your hands or warm up your feet or send the Qi down into the body. So that would be a harmonizing method. It's not necessarily, that part of that exercise is not necessarily trying to get rid of, oh, there's evil Qi in my head, get rid of it. It's like, it's only evil because it's in the wrong place, right? Like, you know, the tantric lamas always say, like, if you took a poop on your kitchen floor, poop isn't evil. It just belongs in your composting toilet, right? And if you drop your donut in the composting toilet, that's a bummer. It's not evil. It's just it went in the wrong place, right? So the same thing. Oh, this Qi up here, if you were to put that down in your dantian, you would feel powerful and centered instead of worried and in pain. This is the notion of harmonizing, right? So we're moving Qi from, oh, it's too much over here, a little bit over here. Some of the practices are work, the inner smile, which is in that second module. That's a powerful harmonizing exercise, the inner smile, like I already mentioned, the microcosmic orbit, and that whole 8-section brocade Qigong that we do in module 4 is a complete just harmonizing the entire system. Okay, last notes. So if that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will. to do module 3. And if you haven't been in the alchemical immersion so far, that's okay. Just jump in on module 3, no problem. Or don't, just take anything that was of value to you tonight and go use that in whatever practice does suit you. Like, that's the thing with these. It's not about signing up for the one size fits all. It's about pulling a Bruce Lee, right? Absorb what is useful to you. That's the part he didn't say, to you, in parentheses. Absorb what is useful to you, discard what is useless to you for now, and add what is uniquely your own, right? So that would be the cool thing to do. But if you're stoked, then over the course of that module, what you'll find is that the practices go from, first you learn what are called the Qi scattering exercises. And these are the epitome of dispersing Qigong. They're mobilizing the body. You're visualizing, casting out all the gunk from yourself and from your space, all this cool stuff. You go through, you learn the 1 through 4 and the invocations, which is like this old spiritual Qigong thing. And then you learn the Taoist 5 exercises, which are extremely tonifying, just in the way they're built. Like, I can't exactly explain this. I actually have made a big study of like, how do each Qigong work? And I can say, oh yeah, it stretches the lung meridian, various kind of things. But the effect of those, and just by personal experience, is they're very strengthening. They're very building exercises. And I can't tell you quite why they do that so well, but they do. And so this is something that you can try, and you can play with your ratios. Do you need a little more of that dispersion in the first, I'm just going to do the Qi scattering every day. Like, maybe your practice right now is to do yin yoga, right? And you get done with that, but you're feeling more and more flexible, but you still feel like pent up emotions or stuck Qi. Try adding the Qi scattering exercises to it, or try add it before you meditate. If you want to get your thought whirling to slow down faster, scatter the Qi first. And in the Tibetan system, they would say the wind that those thoughts ride on will have been subdued. And so you'll sit down in the mind, will go down right away. If, on the other hand, your meditation was more sleepy, you could do those tonifying exercises and build the amount of luminosity that's in your body, so that you could actually have more presence of awareness. So that's your sales pitch for module 3. That's a little bit about the 3 main methods of medical Qigong. That's a lot of M's. The 3 most alliterative methods of Qigong for you tonight. So that's our presentation for this evening. Let's take maybe 3 minutes and see if you have any Q&A before we sign off for tonight. So anything you want to say? No?
I'm really appreciating how I've been thinking about, working out and not doing a Qigong practice because I want to do the physical stuff.
Yeah.
But to kind of realize, actually, I can strengthen myself a lot more by doing some yin stuff.
Yeah.
So that feels really good.
Cool. I love if that's what you're taking away, because that's one of my main practices as well. Is you can even the lubricating the joints that we do in the 4th module is a Qigong, and you could do that before your strength training. And what it does is it gets you in the body. It prevents injury in a lot of ways. And it only takes about 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And then your strength training, there's actually a whole practice of people who have experimented with like combining mindfulness and weightlifting. And so like, for the 1 minute that I'm lifting weights, I'm going to be absolutely present. And like, I don't do that. I do some other Taoisty stuff when I do strength training. But what's interesting is that just doing that Qigong at the beginning is a primer, so that the rest of your training, instead of just putting on the Metallica and chugging a pre-workout or whatever kids do, you could actually make it this sadhana. And how is that at the end, it feels similar to when you've done a yoga practice, even though, you worked on some particular complexes, today was, deadlift day or something like that, and my own experience, those don't always feel like a yoga practice when you're done. But when you set them up right energetically, you finish deadlift day and you're like, oh, yeah. And that's where the Qigong is. Like Gong means working, Qi means the life force energy. And so it's not the fancy mudras that do that, it's the work. And so you can just put that into your practice just like that.
Yeah, I really love that. It feels a lot more. There's certain times where I actually walk out of the gym and I really feel that. And it's just a kind of, I don't know, for whatever reason, my mind is separated and just tends to be what the mind does. But yeah, I really appreciate being able to like just live a more like holistic or integrated life with all of it, kind of just merging and blending all together.
Yeah.
I have one question with sweating. There's been one thing where I've actually, part of it I do feel like is maybe the mattress. One of the people that I'm renting this is like, yeah, that's the hottest mattress in the world. And that could be part of it, but actually I had an amoebic abscess in my liver maybe about 5 years ago. And I've just ever since kind of just been working with restoring my chi maybe on like a deeper level. And it's been maybe the last like 4 months that it kind of came back. So I'm just wondering if you might have some comments around what, in terms of the medical Qigong, what might be like a kind of, if you're sweating at the nighttime, maybe I mean, what I'm kind of initially thinking is maybe I just need to disperse some of the energy and there's some of it that's just inside, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, just based on what you said, they actually say that night sweats can be, night sweats in particular is often from a yin deficiency. And it's kind of like try not to get too nerdy, but you know how in the desert, if little cracks form, have you ever seen these, so what that is that the water is being pulled up by the atmosphere, and then the drops of water actually pull on other drops of water. And so there's a whole method of dry land agriculture, permaculture, where you scratch out those little cracks so that the water doesn't siphon itself up out of the desert as quickly. Anyway, that's a kind of a metaphor for yin deficiency, is that there's not enough like sense of this yin wateriness to hold the fluids inside. And so they're sort of evaporating up to the surface. That's the notion. And the reason I say that is because you mentioned the liver challenge, and that can give you a basis of liver yin deficiency, which then will make the rest of the body's yin sort of a little more taxed. It'll be harder for you to just have the feeling of abundant yin. And so you can certainly try, like this month, do that Taoist 5 Yin Qigong, because it'll tonify all those organs. And then that in turn helps them do their job and build that yin. But as well, you could go talk to your acupuncturist and say, hey, this medical Qigong guy said maybe yin deficiency. What do you think? And they can give you herbs for that. And when it's a yin or blood deficiency, herbs tend to be faster than if it's a qi stagnation or qi deficiency. Then the qigong tends to work a little faster. So those would be my suggestions. And then of course you can get, like the biohackers would probably first say, well, get a chili pad, right? They make these pads that go on your bed that you can adjust the temperature. I don't know how expensive they are or not. But this is one of the things, because people have realized sleep is so crucial, and temperature is actually a big part of sleep. And so they've made these, like whatever kind of mattress you have, that here's this pad that can actually keep your body temperature exactly where you want it. So that might be a worthy investment to check out and just see. But those are a couple of suggestions. Start with, this is not medical advice. Temple Style Integrative Arts disavows all responsibility for blah, 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 blah. And these statements have not been approved by the FDA. Okay, any other quick questions? What do we say? Or comments? No, did we cover it? All right, then I'm going to go make some Qigong pizza. And I hope you enjoy the coming full moon. I hope you enjoy the hot, hot weather. If you go on my website, you can get that. If you want to work on your liver, by the way, any of y'all, Qigong for the spring season is currently discounted because there's only 2 weeks left of spring season. So you could get that course for a discount and then have it for a year, or download the videos in there. And it's really quite epic. And other than that, Miko's teaching on Saturday watch all the places where you get announcements for that. Particularly, there's a Facebook event that's up, and so you could do some live practice. And other than that, we'll see you very, very soon. All right, blessings, y'all.